Welcome to episode 107 of the Daniel Yoris podcast with today's guest, Dr. Kevin Marryshow. Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. Joined here today by Dr. Kevin Marryshow. Kevin, thanks for being here, man. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Dan. I really appreciate it.
We were having already a good chat right before we started recording and said, hey, let's hit the record button and save this stuff for the recording, because sometimes we get carried away, and two people who are in the healthcare field and in the personal services field, maybe more broadly, where we can just talk for days. So we got to try and keep things focused. But the people aspect of what we do is so important. And it's not a small thing to say. Kevin, introduce yourself and tell us who you are and what it is that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Dr. Kevin Marryshow, chiropractor at training. I went to school in, was New York Chiropractic College. Now it's Northeast College of Health Sciences. So they rebranded recently. I've been practicing for just over 10 years now. I work with a company called Myodetox, a movement health company right now. Well, originally based in Toronto. We have clinics across Toronto, Los Angeles, and Vancouver. Currently for the company, I am head of purpose and communications. And, we could get into what that title means, but ultimately trying to continue to build purpose, soul, energy, and magic just around, therapy, movement health, and our ability to inspire the world to live a better life by taking care of their body. And, I get an opportunity to really inspire our team to continue to push forward with that mission and touch a lot of lives along the way.
Scaling humans is not an easy task. And with the the emergence of all this AI tools, I think the thing that some people may not realize is that, to copy a person's hands or the way a person speaks or that, professional, therapeutic touch, if you will, or the feel, that's not replicable. But when you try to build a company, that's exactly what you're trying to do, which is a monumental task. And so that's why what you do is so important for someone to say, what does this purpose mean? I want you to explain a little bit more about that, but I think that that's probably a good summary of finding a way to scale humans.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you hit it on the head from, I often have conversations. I've recently gotten on the board of trustees at Northeast College of Health Sciences. And, we have a lot of conversations about the safety of the profession and chiropractic and, manual therapy at large. And, what are the threats to our space, to the future of what we do? And, I think you already hit it on the head, which is, I think we're safe for a while. When it comes to our ability to deliver value and care in people's lives and the ability to potentially, replicate that with AI or robots, I think, not that it's a never, but I think for now, I think we're safe. I think we're safe. There's a level of, connection and empathy and common ground that is so incredibly important to therapeutic alliance that I think often gets overlooked. And then to answer your question on just what does purpose mean, not only at Myodetox, but just in the world, I think that movement health is such a incredibly magical space that I think there's universal languages, and to me, movement is one of them. I think a lot of folks, not only in my space, but in the world can resonate with the idea that movement is a language that not only does everybody generally understand, but there's also a sense of purpose, meaning, and desire to want to move. I think that people are often either missing the tools or are not sure if they can occupy space when it comes to movement, depending on how it was, sold and packaged to them, which speaks to the other end of, my title in the space that I occupy in Myodetox on the communications. And, you and I were talking a bit earlier on how important story is to common ground and, getting folks to understand how they could occupy space, how they can show up, and how movement health could be a strong proponent in their lives. The way that we communicate that to the world is, I think, vastly underrated. And there's so much more room for us to grow in how we communicate the value that we could provide in people's lives.
Thinking of movement as a universal language is a brilliant way of thinking of it. It's one of those things where probably the easiest example is sport. Everyone watches the Olympics or name your favorite sport, and you might not know the rules of the sport, but you can understand that like what that person is doing is quite amazing, whatever the task is. And so we can make a story about, a little boy or a little girl in a obscure village in some random corner of the world can make it to that big stage, and we can all understand what it is that we're doing and, take all the inspiration and whatever you might from that. In your Instagram bio, you have the quote. It says, reimagine the relationship between you and your body. And that is about telling a story to yourself. Can you talk about that and what that means to you?
Yeah, I think that movement, health, fitness, exercise, all of these concepts already have strong constructs around them, whether it's from a cultural standpoint or, the media that you consume, or, however, exercise, fitness, movement is occupied in somebody's life, just how that concept lives often is already predefined. And there's a huge opportunity to reimagine and redefine what movement means in our lives. I think that it's kind of rabbit and pinholed right now around just what movement health means to movement only, and not enough of a conversation around what that means to mental health and community and social connection. There's a vast open sea around how movement health can enable somebody to live a healthy life. And I think today it is a bit too literal. Not enough conversation around what movement health provides access to folks. And there's a huge opportunity to storytell around how movement health could occupy space in people's lives beyond just fitness. And I think access is another huge proponent to reimagination. I think that we look for an hour of time or a gym membership, and we've created barriers around movement health. And earlier, before we hit record, we were talking about Instagram for a quick second. I think we said, pause. We gotta bring that onto the show. But I think what was really powerful with the explosion of Instagram, yes, but just storytelling in a very viral, scalable way. I know personally, in my career, I could speak for myself and probably a lot of other folks who were sharing, movement health content on Instagram in 2013, 2014. That's when I started. I got a lot of flack for doing that because, I was essentially giving it away for free. And, my mentality was there's a lot of folks that just don't have access to tools and knowledge. And I had a platform to be able to provide that for, folks that I would never, physically see in person. And, if they don't have access to help or to a guide to help them, live a little better life through movement, I had an opportunity to do that. And I'm just, really enamored by how the narrative and the conversation has changed about sharing information and sharing education and inspiring people to move because of the, the vast and profound impact it has on people's lives.
It's sad to think that, and I believe this to be true, that fitness is it's a luxury that we have in this world to even have the time, the money, or the problem of needing to go to the gym is a luxury problem. This doesn't exist in countries who are undeveloped or where people don't have food and don't have safety and don't have shelter. Like they don't have fitness is not an issue in their life because they have, survival issues, right? And that's horrible, obviously. But in our world here in the West, for the most part, like fitness is a luxury where even here, the lower income people don't have the access to fitness, although they are the ones who probably suffer the most from movement inefficiencies or health issues overall. And there's a whole socioeconomic conversation to be had there, but movement is or fitness is a luxury. And so trying to free that as much as possible to everyone is again a huge task. And I think there are some financial implications that go with that, because while someone doesn't need a $200 a month gym membership and to get a massage every week and to have all the latest workout gear, and you don't need to be spending thousands of dollars, you could conceivably do it for a $0 investment. You still need a time investment, and that's oftentimes the most expensive part of the investment, aside from the financial aspect of it. So trying to free that up and deliver the most valuable information for free is a big reason why I've even started the podcast, and just to get that out there and get these ideas out there. But then we run into the issue of quality, because everyone has a platform. It's great that everyone has a platform, but the problem is that everyone has a platform, and there will be the charlatans and the people trying to steal effectively money and resources from these people. So trying to spread things in a good way is very difficult, which again leads to your role with Myodetox.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to speak to the movement health and, accessibility and the business around it and luxury. Like, I think at the end of the day, movement health is an experience, and we all have, different tiers and levels of means and access to it. And, we at Myodetox, like, we're not, naive to the fact that we're building a business around a therapy, and there's going to be accessibility and barriers to that, but with that being said, there is a responsibility that we have to spread the message around movement health and the access to movement health in different ways. The business of it allows us a platform and a launch pad to be able to provide opportunities and experiences around movement health to, communities that otherwise would not have access to it. And, the business allows us to do that. However, the business creates an opportunity for, a very curated experience for the folks that, have access to it. But, we're not naive to the fact that that is not the whole, and there's a level of inclusivity that is limited there. And, we want to be able to create opportunities where we can kind of get to it on both ends. And, back to the idea of movement health, it is universal, and it is something that everybody should have access to. And because we've, kind of packaged it, not, Myodetox, but all of the brands in the world that have built a business around that, like, there is an inspiration and inspiring, opportunity around that also. But I think it's just a matter of taking responsibility for the fact that, us as brands, we exist around, fitness and movement health, and we have work to do to bring that to the entire world.
And so how do we go about spreading this, and where can people start to understand what their movement health is? Of course, there's a lot of things, and if someone's got, an injury or something that's definitely prohibiting them from doing something, that would be, number one priority. But assume someone's, got no injuries and just wants to get interested in their movement and try to be on the prevention side of things. Where would you suggest that person starts to look or think about?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that, the true definition of story is understanding that you're the hero of your own story, and you need a guide that you can trust, that you have, common ground with. There's a level of empathy there, and there's a lot of incredible guides in the world. There are incredible brands, there's incredible people, and you need to find a guide that provides you with knowledge, safety, security, community that fills you up, right? And you gotta really take note of the markers and the, verticals that you want to fulfill in those experiences, and just ensure that that guide is able to provide that for you, right? And then there's a matter of, what is your own personal scenario? What do you have access to, right? There's everything from, whether it be Instagram, YouTube, and that's when, to your point earlier, a lot of people have mics, and a lot of people have platforms, and you just got to do a bit more research, ask questions, get advice on what platforms are delivering and providing, high quality information, creating a bit of a through line between art and science, and appreciation for we know a lot, and we can use that as a proxy for how we share information in the world. And there's a lot we don't know. So we're going to have to use, best judgment and, put our best foot forward in the way that we share information. So, my advice for that person would be to find a guide, find a platform that is trusted. And I think that's why brands are being built, so that these are trusted brands that want to provide, value in the world and in somebody's lives, and are telling a story around that for people to, find community in. And that guide is really who's going to take you to your goals. And, for us in Myodetox, we call it future proof, which is, ultimately a never ending journey to living a better life through, sustainability. Am I going to be able to do the things I want to do tomorrow? Longevity, how long am I going to be able to do these things? And an interesting concept around immortality. Can I add on time on the back end through the work that I'm doing today?
The very interesting part to me is that there is room for infinite, maybe not infinite, but a lot of competitors in this space. And it's because of the story and this concept of the guide, where the person receiving the message, they have their own life experiences that has led them to that point. And so the guide brings their life experiences, and my life experiences in the way that I portray the message may not be heard or received well by everyone. It may be good for some people and not good for others, versus the way that you portray the message may be good for some and not good for others. And so we can all fit in here, because at the end of the day, like, the mechanics of what one is teaching is more or less the same, the basic elements of it. And you've got your roundabout ways of getting at it, but everyone is getting at the same stuff. So this is how there's so much, space for everyone. But when we say a, movement health, there's not a job that is a movement health person. So at Myodetox, you guys have a somewhat of a interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary approach. Can you just explain a little bit about what the approach and like the kind of, I guess, business model of Myodetox is and how that all works to promote all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Back to story, I actually think if we were all movement health guides, it would be easier for the everyday person to understand what value a group of people provide in their lives. We've obviously created institutional constructs around the disciplines, right? Whether it be chiropractic, physical therapy, massage therapy, osteopathy, so on and so forth. You hit on a really interesting point earlier, which is I think ultimately as professionals, when we think about movement health and, we're not the hero, the individual who's trying to live a better life is the hero. We shouldn't be married to interventions. It's all about outcomes. And I think, if I were to talk about Myodetox, I think a incredibly important opportunity in the journey is in the assessment and really taking the time to, Daniel, if I'm working with you and you got low back pain and we're talking about that pain in particular, I need to more deeply understand what it's actually about. If it's not about the back pain, it's because you want to, get back to soccer. That's your social circle. That's like the thing that fills you up. That's really the goal, because without knowing the goal, if it's just about pain and you're at an 8 out of 10 now and you're down to 3 out of 10, if a 3 out of 10 enables you to play soccer at a level that makes you feel fulfilled, then that's progress. And without that goal in mind, we kind of get a bit lost. You are here kind of like, on a map, just that pin. Without that starting point, there's so many directions that we can go, and knowing at least where you're at and where you're trying to go provides a template or a platform for us to, go on this journey. There's going to be a lot of, ups and downs. There is no clear straight line between where you are today and your goal. And I think that's the beauty in the journey. I think there's a lot to learn from, injury and pain. I was working with a patient actually earlier today who was dealing with an acute low back flare up. And that experience allowed us to get very foundational with his core strength and just working on his sequential firing and his, TA activation. And, he feels now like he's skating. He's a hockey player. He feels like now he's skating at a much higher level, better than he's done in the last 5 to 10 years. And I think it's the injury that created the launch pad for us to, figure things out and, break him down to a foundational level that we probably wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. Right. So I think that, from assessment and really understanding where somebody's at, to your point earlier, it's hard to replicate what an assessment looks like. And I think that there is a nod and appreciation to the fact that, we'll call them these movement health guides, and Myodetox in particular, chiropractors, physical therapists, massage therapists across the world. You have, manual therapy and movement practitioners who have a lot of different ways to assess. And I think it's just a common appreciation for we need to spend time to figure out where we're going, where we're starting. And from there is this spectrum of, manual therapy, movement, all of these inputs in order to get you to this goal that you predefined at the beginning. I really just want to play soccer. Like, it's actually not about my back pain.
Right. The concept of the launchpad is very interesting to me, because that's kind of, my whole life story. Like, I had, major knee injuries, and then that got me in and out of, various clinics and got me interested in the body and all that stuff from when I was, 12 years old or whatever it was. But I feel like it's very true for a lot of people. And of course, not everyone becomes a, health and fitness professional of some sort, but you're unaware of your body. Generally, something happens, you get hurt, and you're like, oh, now I've got to take care of myself. Or it's a worse illness, and it's like, okay, now I've got to really work on my nutrition because XYZ happened and I can't afford for that to happen again. Which is disappointing, but it would be great if everyone, thought that way in the first place, and then we prevented all of these things. But it's very difficult, I think, as a human being to try to prevent something that in your head logically that it's possible that you will experience back pain or have an injury or gain weight if you don't pay attention to what's going on. But it's very difficult to apply that to yourself if it's never happened to you, because it's just not part of your story. It's like a child, a young infant is unable to think that things will change from the way they are right now. It's like when a baby's crying, they're hungry. It's like, oh my God, I'll never get food again. But then they get food and they forget that they were hungry before, and it's like this whole cycle. But as adults, we almost think that way with our pain. And I'm sure this is a thing that you see a lot with patients, where they come in, they get better, they do their rehab, and then a couple of years down the road, they forget about continuing to do their rehab and continuing to do the work, and then you see them again, 3-4 years later, whatever it is, right? What do you think is the solution to helping people like break that cycle and to continue to take care of themselves without that input of pain or injury or illness?
So I think that the way we break the cycle is through empowerment. I think that why I'm so passionate, a lot of folks at Myodetox are, and just manual therapy and movement practitioners around the world, like, movement health is so nuanced, which makes it really misunderstood. A lot of other versions of health are a lot more clear. They're not perfect, but, oral health is a great example. If you have something in your teeth, you use a toothpick or you floss. If you have a cavity, like, there's a lot more clarity as to when you have X, you do Y. The flow chart is a lot more clear in the everyday person's mind. You can attach the same thing to like visual health. If you're having issues with your vision, you have a bit of a flow chart in your mind as to what are the next steps that you should be taking. But with movement health, it's not very clearly understood. As movement practitioners, we already have a hard enough time explaining it simply enough to ourselves to be able to communicate that to the world. But the true break in the cycle is, you were mentioning you had knee pain, and even if it is a re-aggravation of knee pain you've had in the past, for you to have a sense of where do you go from here already is going to bring your, experience of pain down, because there's a level of like an internal locus of control of, Kevin and I talked through this. We talked about, I'm a 3 out of 10. I'm going to do some, work loading, whatever exercise we might have talked about, just like introducing movement and load early. The next that you were a 3 out of 10 on the pain scale, the next day after doing those exercises, you're a 1, you're a 2. Okay, my pain scale is going down. The work that I'm doing is creating some change. I feel like I could manage this based on the things that Kevin and I worked on, right? This is a 4 out of 10 pain. You're doing some stuff at home, some, self-care. It's escalating 4, 5, 6. Your ability to load is going down. Like, these things are escalating to the point where I got to go back in and, work with Kevin, reassess. Maybe it's not what we worked on the last time. Like, the empowerment of knowing where to go based on what your experience is really important for people to break out of the cycle of, you mentioned earlier, I did all of these things to get to a better ground so I can perform at a higher level. I feel good. I stopped doing them. I think that's okay, right? I think that's okay, because why somebody stopped doing them, as long as they are progressing the way that they're loading their body and, what their activity looks like, that's okay. It's just when they re-aggravate or get back to a place of pain or discomfort or injury, where do they go from there, and how are they going to manage that experience? To me, that's the empowerment that's going to truly break the cycle.
You mentioned that you're involved with your former school, and then, in talking about the way that we approach health and wellness is not very like if this then that versus some certain other aspects of health in general or other industries overall. Did you feel that in school you were somewhat taught that way, as a structured approach of we try to fit things in boxes of if this then that, if the orthopedic test shows X then do Y treatment? But when you get out into the real world, and it works in school when you have like a pseudo patient in front of you who's acting, and then when you get out into the real world, it's like, oh, that didn't work. And now that you're on the other side of it, where you're hiring and training other professionals to work under the Myodetox umbrella, do you find that to be a challenge with people who are fresh out of school and haven't spent much time in the real world clinical experience or just thinking about it overall?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. I think life experiences is a huge challenge in, being the guide for people who are trying to accomplish their movement health goals, right? Like, if we pick apart the, biopsychosocial model, I think that the bio component of pain and injuries and high performance is already complex and complicated as it is. Like we took an entire year just picking apart anatomy, like head and neck anatomy was an entire semester, right? Like there's so much to learn, but what ends up getting left on the table, I think that some space can be created to bring the psychosocial component to health and movement health into the conversation earlier. I think that there's a lot of work to be done to be able to bring that in. Literature, like there's a lot of things that are at play here in order to introduce that earlier. But I think if there was a bit more of a convergence on how the biopsychosocial model and how components outside of the biomechanical experience contribute to pain will be incredibly important to tie that all in. But, to your point earlier on what are your, clinical experiences, it's a tough needle to thread, because you are not really having real life interactions until, later on in your educational experience. But as that should be the case, because you need to, create a strong baseline of knowledge and understanding before you start guiding and supporting people in that way. And then just like that, you're into the real world, right? And people are, spending real money, have real choices around what health and wellness looks like to them. And then we have to insert ourselves into their story to be able to provide value. And that concept in of itself is challenging, right? For the, new grad or somebody just coming out of school. So, one thing we really hang our hat on Myodetox is development and personal development and career development. And there's a lot of growth to be had. I'm still taking courses now, 11 years out. I just did a TMJ course the other day, because there's just not only so much to learn, but so much to brush up on. Whether it's, anatomy or just the entire psychology of pain. There's just so much nuance that we should already be forever students as is, let alone in this space, because your desire to be a student matters to the person who's putting their care and dreams and aspirations in your hands. It's a tall order. It's a challenging job, but it is like as fulfilling as it gets to be somebody's guide and to help them get to their goals. So, we really hang our hats on Myodetox at speed tracking that experience and the development necessary to fill these other buckets that kind of bring movement health as a whole and really treating the whole person. I think we come out feeling shaky at best on how we're going to support them biomechanically, let alone how we're going to, create common ground, get buy-in, support compliance, understand, the nuance and other challenges in somebody's life that contributes to the pain experience or the performance experience. So it's a tough job, but I think the joy and the beauty in it is never ending. There's so much growth to be had, and you're really making such a powerful impact on somebody's life and inevitably the world.
There's few better feelings, I think, than when someone comes to you and says, "Wow, that really helped me be able to do this X simple task in life, be able to play with my grandkids," or whatever. It's an example that I go back to often. But that simple thing versus it's one thing to be like, okay, you helped this Olympian win a medal. That's awesome too. But it's almost more powerful to help an elderly woman to be able to bend down and tie her shoes, something like that. Whatever the case is, something very simple. But it does take this lifelong learning, because every human is so different and no one is a textbook. Like just the way that we, the practitioners, will not be replaced by AI and robots very shortly. Humans and the patients are also not, they're not robots, right? They're not going to be presented the exact same way, and no two people are going to need the exact same treatment at the exact same time with the exact same energy and all of the things. So it requires this lifelong learning and this interest in helping the person first, and then helping their physiology and anatomy second, almost, is the way that I kind of like to think about it.
Absolutely.
What then do you look for? Sorry, I interrupted you. You were about to say something?
No, I was just literally stamp of approval on everything you just said.
Thank you. I was just going to say, what then do you look for in new practitioners, and maybe how can people think about what they should be looking for if they're experiencing some pain in a practitioner in regards to the various fields, chiropractic, physio, massage therapy, etc., and what should they be looking for in the individual?
Yeah, so it's a great question. At Myo, we often talk about the patient experience as it pertains to, there's not a lot of incredible tech in our space. So you imagine you're trying to make a decision on who you might see at a clinic, and you're choosing through some faces and a bio. And those are the options and the clarity that you have, or the information that you have to make a really important decision in your life. So it's a bit challenging on both ends, right? Like, I might not be experienced in, I don't know, something like fencing, right? And like, that is not familiar to me, but that is the sport in which you want to perform at a high level at. So not being able to have that common ground, or that potentially not being my area of expertise, like, I understand movement, so I'm going to be able to help you, but I'm not going to be able to help you at the level of somebody who like really embodies and enjoys and invests time in understanding the nuances of the sport. All right. So I think that there's a huge opportunity to, quote unquote, like, matchmake significantly better between patient and therapist, because that alone is incredibly important to the therapeutic alliance, right? To be able to have, common ground. There's a level of empathy. Like, I'm not trying to I do my best to stay healthy and not get injured and perform at a high level. But like, there's a small part of me that embraces injury because there's common ground that I get to create there, right? Like, I have experienced the experience of low back pain and how debilitating it can be and how impactful that is to, somebody's life. And to be able to meet somebody at where I've been through this, it took me X amount of time. This was what my experience was like. That might not be yours, but like, I understand what you're feeling is profound, right? That level of empathy and common ground just creates a platform for us to build a relationship around, and that relationship is so incredibly important to your outcomes. So I think that somebody who has a thirst for knowledge, right? Like, I think we might look at somebody's bio and, all of these credentials and all of these courses they've taken, and, they invest so much clinically. Like, I wonder if they're going to be able to connect with me. I think that there's magic in their thirst for knowledge and growth and clinical development, because they're trying to get better to serve you better. And there's a lot of merit and value in that. I think whatever common ground you can predetermine in terms of that person's like life experiences, where they come from, I think all of that is important. For me personally, folks that I work with from, the Black or the BIPOC community, like, there is this automatic level of common ground, which is something that really fills me up, right? Like, I have, folks that are of African American, African Canadian descent who, choose to work with me specifically because they feel like, from an unspoken context, I know where they come from and I know their experiences, and, there are things that they won't have to say that I'm just going to understand during our therapeutic experience. And I think that all of those factors play into, the therapeutic alliance, who you put your trust in, and who's going to be your guide to ultimately help you chase that longevity that you're in pursuit of.
Yeah, it really does matter a lot, and probably more than people really think, whether they even choose people for something like that consciously or subconsciously. But part of what we, what you as practitioners do is utilizing to some extent the placebo effect, where if a person feels like they're comfortable, they're relaxed, the practitioner knows what he or she is doing or they're doing, and I'm going to get better based on what they're doing, I believe in what the practitioner is saying, then that treatment is more likely to work than if they feel uncomfortable, or they don't like the paint on the wall, or like whatever, something about the experience is not optimal for them. And so if that's something with something that you can relate in the practitioner's personal life, be it race, be it sex, be it sport that they played, be it name of this high school that they went to, like whatever, anything that you can pick at, that actually does play a role. And this, I think, goes back to something I was saying earlier about there's room for everyone. Somebody might not like me because they don't like my beard. And you know what? That's okay. And that's fine. But if my beard is impacting them from like, trusting me for whatever reason, be it silly or not silly, then that's okay, because they're going to go find you and they like your beard. And so now they're going to listen, and they're going to, figure out, and they're going to feel comfortable, and they're going to enjoy what's happening, and they're going to get better. We may have done the exact same technique, but there's more to the whole story than just the modalities that you use or the specific techniques that one uses, right?
Yeah.
And that's not something that can really be like, you can't train that. It just is what it is. And so I think probably the message there is to practitioners and to trainers is just be you. Just be yourself, and your people will find you. And to patients and potential patients and clients and whatever, it's find the person that you think you're going to like, because you probably will.
Yeah. It's so important. Like, there's so many people doing such incredible work in our space, and there's a level of unconscious bias that a patient's going to come in with, and just a level of appreciation for that exists, spoken or unspoken. And that's why diversity is just so important. Not only you mentioned race, sex, but there's a lot of pieces in diversity, equity, and inclusion there that contribute. But there's also diversity of skill set, clinical background, experiences. All of those things matter and play a huge role in the patient-therapist alliance and ultimately what clinical outcomes are going to look like.
As far as the diversity of skill sets and professions within the healthcare or within the therapy profession, are there big buckets of injuries or ailments that you would typically send someone to see a chiropractor versus a physiotherapist versus a massage therapist? Of course, like, some of the modalities are similar and some are different, and everyone can treat all of the things. But how do you go about, putting that patient with that type of practitioner? Not the individual, but like their title, maybe.
Yeah, very complex and nuanced question. So I could speak to the experience of Myodetox, right? Like, I think interdisciplinary settings in clinics is a commonly understood term. I think the next level up from that is intradisciplinary. And when I say that, I say like if there's a strong level of collaboration within a clinical setting, then you get to take it beyond physios, chiros, massage therapists specialize in X, Y, Z. And then it's, Daniel, for the sake of conversation, you're a physical therapist right now. Like Kevin, the chiropractor, Daniel, the physical therapist, our collaboration of care is going to be more predicated on our clinical expertise, cases that we have a level of expertise and training or experiences. So for example, I am decently proficient at jaw pain and TMJ, but I'm not an expert because it's not a area of the body that I spend a lot of time studying. And if that is an area of the body you take a strong interest in, and you really are building a clinical expertise around that, I'm going to refer based on your clinical resume, the things that you like treating, the things you like working on, rather than I'm a chiropractor, you're a physical therapist. So that's the benefit that we have in this interdisciplinary type of setting. Cross collaboration, communication, case studies, all of these experiences that allow us to better understand the value that one another provides, so that, at Myodetox, we often talk about ultimately the client is the life athlete, and they are the pro athlete and the hero in this story. And if we can build a team around them in the same way a pro athlete would, everybody knows what value and experience everybody else is going to provide, because there's that much teamwork and collaboration, because this person's success matters that much to the success of an organization, and so on and so forth. And, it's the same space that a person occupies in their own life. This person's success means that much to their partner, their kids, their community. So they should be having a very similar experience. And if our communication around that person and their goals is tight, that is the ultimate therapeutic experience, because then it's not about, physical therapy, chiropractic, RMT. It's about what each of us individuals can contribute to that person's experience in their pursuit of movement health.
Is the ideal scenario then, and I'm not sure how feasible this would be business wise, but having a practitioner that deals with within the office, that deals with, or the clinic that deals with each of the body parts. So Kevin, you're the TMJ guy. There's someone else who's the shoulder person. There's someone else who's the upper back, lower back, whatever. Split it up however many ways you split it up, but you might need 10, 15, 20 different practitioners at that time, which gets hectic and to deal with. But in a perfect scenario, if money was no object, would that be the ideal way to go about it?
I think so. I think that there's a level of authority and confidence that a clinician would have over a particular case if they have decided that they are the expert in that case. To your mention earlier on, money aside, experiences aside, like we need to be generalists to be able to serve the greatest amount of people, because that serves the mission, which is, creating movement health as a daily habit for everybody. But if it was about the like complete client centered care and it's about your experience, having an expert in a particular case, which again, there's just so many cases under the sun that somebody could walk in with, that still makes it very challenging to have an expert, quote unquote, for every particular case. But if that could be the vision or the MO, I think that would be a really powerful experience for the client. And because of that, folks in our space are very aware of that, which is why I think that there's just so much work being put into being good at as many case presentations as possible, because this space has just such passionate clinicians who really want to be an authority on everything, and it's life work. It never ends. And I think it's because passionate folks in our space understand the value and the power of being an expert in a lot of case presentations and being able to deliver value regardless of what walks through the door. And that creates a bit of a utopia around how we think about being the best version of ourselves as clinicians.
Having even just the humbleness, or the humility rather, to say that, hey, patient X, I'm not the best person to treat you, but my colleague down the hall, that they got you. They're going to be good. And so I think that's where the whole intradisciplinary approach really shines, because if I have to if I was a practitioner and I have to refer out to a different clinic, well, the business model of that is now I lose money. And, you don't want to think about that all the time, but it does matter. So you don't want to lose money. And if you want to, believe the karma of that, I'm sure it will all come back and it all comes full circle. People are getting helped, all that stuff. But like in the moment, you're losing the patient. But when you send that patient to your colleague next door who is under the same company umbrella as you, now that the business case for that is better, because the company is still retaining that patient, retaining that source of income, and that patient is getting the best care that they can get. But building out the team is really the challenge of that, obviously, to get all the people to be able to do that. But that's why I believe that it just works so well, and I don't see a future where that isn't the case for most clinics, especially in big cities like Toronto, where you have an abundance of people. If you live, Northern Ontario, you might be the only manual practitioner for, quite a big radius. In that case, you're not going to have an interdisciplinary team. But in big cities, I think it's the only way forward.
Yeah, there's just huge value in working with a team of like-minded, passionate folk. And, going back to, the hero of the story, the client, the life athlete, the pro athlete, them being in an environment where there's that much communication happening around them, like to revisit your question earlier on, what type of clinician, guide, movement, coach should a client be seeking out, or an individual in your, audience listening to this should be seeking out. Like, you want somebody who's willing to pass you off because they feel like you can get better care from somebody else. That in of itself, like, I want that person on my team, right? Like, that person needs to remain in your ecosystem because they've just demonstrated a value that is, not always, super common. And that value is saying that you are the hero. This is a client-centered care model. I'm here completely invested in your success, and I'm willing to pass you off to somebody else who I think will do a better job happily, because it's about you. So that in of itself is very powerful.
building off this concept of being the hero, can you talk a little bit about one of the programs that you've co-founded called Mindsets here in the GTA? Because that may be even a more, you're being the hero of someone else's story in that venture. And I think from what I know about it, that it's a beautiful blend of helping people's lives through fitness. And so can you just discuss that and what it's all about and how it all came to be?
Yeah. So my wife has a coworker who does a lot of work with the jail system and mainly with youth who are in remand. And she built an incredible program. It's called Amadeus, and the original intention, well, still the intention, but they're building on top of it now, which is bringing education, accredited and formalized education to youth in remand on the inside. And the purpose and intention of that is to allow these youth to come out with more tools to be able to, demonstrate the ability to, do a job, provide a service, and just set them up for better success when they come out. From that, there was an opportunity to build on the programming through health and wellness. And she reached out to me to build programming for these youth and really leaning into movement health. And I thought it would be amiss if that was delivered to these youth without a mental health and mindfulness capacity. And that's where the mind comes into play in the mindsets. A little bit of a play off words there, but we created a movement and mental health programming piece for these youth to go through over the course of 8 weeks. And once they complete that, they kind of take all of their favorite pieces of the program, put together their own personal plan. And then we give them feedback, and it's really just a lot of encouragement and just, a sense of gratitude for even investing in themselves and in the value, of the program. And then with the program, once they complete it, they actually get credits that will, go towards whatever that overall program is that they're doing, on the insights. So it's just an incredible, platform and program that Amadeus built out. I'm just feeling incredibly blessed to be able to contribute to it.
It sounds incredible, and again, like a beautiful blend of all the things that I believe to be true about health and fitness, that they can have far-reaching impacts beyond like our physical body, and not to get all woo-woo on people, but beyond the physical body and really reshaping your life. If you have nothing else to think about and nothing else to work for, but you have a sport or a physical activity or a wellness practice or something else to aim at, to be that, the North Star type of thing for you. And if that's the thing that gets you out of whatever it is that you're going through in your life, then that's being a hero. Like, that is a totally amazing thing. And so some people might react to it. I'm sure that there are some kids in that program who are just like totally shut off to it because, not everything serves everyone. But I'm sure that there are plenty of kids in that program who will have a total 180 turnaround, and like, in 20, 30, 40 years, I'm sure there'll be some of those kids who are going to be on podcasts and running businesses and like doing whatever they are and saying like, hey, I was part of this program and Kevin was the leader of it and doing his thing. And, that this physical aspect helped me become who I am today, which is some, objective, successful person. So I think it's a very, very, very powerful thing. How can people help with that? And what can you offer? Maybe before how people can help with it, what can you offer as far as insights from that people who are not, youth who have been incarcerated or whatever can take from that, if any?
So to answer your question on how people could, support or get involved, like Mindsets as a programming concept is in its infant stages and it's going to continue to grow. I think, revisiting a conversation we had a bit earlier on, the business of therapy, I think that the business of therapy allows individuals in the world who are chasing movement health to have an experience that they have the good fortune of being able to afford. And I think as, clinicians and therapists, we now have a responsibility to take the stability and the experience that creates for us to pay it forward. Lift as we rise is a very powerful concept to me and, a bunch of folks at Myodetox, we created a program internally called the Emerging Leaders Scholarship Program, and Lift as We Rise is such a powerful concept within that program, which is, back to the business of therapy. As we are able to create financial stability around our ability to offer this experience for folks who could afford it, it's our responsibility to take that and, quote unquote, again, lift as we rise and pay it forward. So I think that, how folks can help is by figuring out what community that they can provide and drive and deliver value in, and whether that's breaking down barriers of access for various reasons. There's so many, different spaces and platforms and communities that therapists can get involved with. And often in those spaces, there isn't a movement health specialist. There isn't a clinician or a therapist who is providing value in that program. And there's just so much value that can be provided just by, raising your hand and deciding that this is a community that I want to support, one that I want to serve, find some common ground so that it's more fulfilling just beyond I'm an expert so I can provide this. That's a community that you actually truly care about, whether it's based on a, personal experience or somebody in your family that resonates with that group. That's often kind of, I think, how people find their communities. For me, it's, young, Black and BIPOC folk who had a very similar experience to mine and didn't know how they could, take up space in healthcare. That is, it means a lot to me personally. So I go chase and support and serve those communities. And I think that if, everybody put a bit of, pen to paper on what that community looks like for them, the community definitely exists. And, raising your hand and providing value is the best way to help and to get involved. And, eventually mindsets will be big enough to bring in more folks to contribute. But there's just so much help to be given because movement health is a concept that it just shouldn't be in its infant stage, but it is. And we got to appreciate that and continue to deliver value.
Yeah, we all move, so we all need it in one way or another. I think like almost a good way to sum up the approach from a business case is somewhat similar to like a Robin Hood approach. Obviously without the theft part of it, but it's like you're trading value and help for money from people who have access to it and can afford to do so, and then taking those resources and then putting them back into the community who can't access or can't afford it at this time. And so like I think that there's no better way to go about that, because I try to embody the same thing. It's like, we all need money. We all need things in the world, and like it's not cheap to live in North America and big cities like Toronto and what have you. And you need things that you need. But you need to help people along the way too. And the rising tide raises all ships, right? So I think that it's a beautiful way to go about it. Not an easy thing to do, but certainly a fulfilling thing to do, rather than just hoarding the money and like sitting there on your own like that. That might be great for like 5 seconds, and then after that you're like, hey, hold on a second, I can do better in this world where we all got into this healthcare world to with big smiles on our faces and big hearts to go and help people. And then somewhere along the way, some people realize, hey, hold on a second, I gotta make some money, and they forget about helping people. So I think it's good to have organizations and structures like yours and what you guys are creating with Myodetox that will be an example to up-and-coming practitioners and businesses across North America and eventually across the world as to how to lead this thing forward, and also how to make money, because that makes the best of both worlds and is enticing to everybody who would ever be involved. Kevin, is there any way that is there any other message that you kind of want to leave the people with here as we start to wrap up? Is there anything that you feel like you need to get off your chest before we close off here today?
Yeah, I want to just continue to really drive home just movement health. And I think there's way too many barriers that exist between individuals and movement health. And, as we were talking earlier, it's a universal language. I think everybody truly wants to move. They want to feel good in their body, just might not necessarily know, where to start, where to look for help. And I think that, back to the earlier concept and, what you had mentioned on my Instagram page of reimagine, I think there is an opportunity to reimagine what movement health looks like, the space that it occupies in our lives. Like, I dream of a world. I got 2 kids now. My son is 4, my daughter's 9 months. And I dream of a world like when we're having dinner, when they're, I don't want to envision them already in their 20s. That's way too fast. but I envision a world in which like we're having dinner and we're already talking about like what's everybody's, movement plan for the next day. Like, are we going to work out together? Y'all going to go for a run? Me and your mom are going to go do this. Like, cause that's how I think. I have a hard time going to bed if I don't know what my plan is for the next day to move. I establish that almost before all else. My wife wouldn't be too happy about that because I got to make sure the kids are taken care of, but I got to fill up my own cup first. But I think about that, like what's happening the next day to be able to fill that cup up. And, I dream of a world in which like that same experience fills a household or a community or a group of people that are constantly talking about what's on the agenda tomorrow, what's on the agenda next week, when are we doing this again? And it doesn't feel like work or a task. It's just ingrained in the way that we think. And I think the work starts now to allow the concept of movement health and how people interact with that idea to just really, take up so much space that it's just a part of our everyday conversation. And, what's really important in Myo as we build this brand around movement health is, social proof is just so important to people inhabiting an idea, which is like a lot of, we often get the question, why do we expand, to LA? And, if LA says XYZ around fitness or any idea is important, the world pays attention. And we truly felt like that was a place and a launch pad for us to be able to give us the best shot to really get this mission of movement health out to the world. It's a very lofty and ambitious goal. And, that is part of the story and the narrative to put us in the best position to be able to do that. So, long story short, movement health is something I would love to see occupy everybody's mind, space, community. And it doesn't need to be scary. It doesn't need to be overwhelming. It doesn't need to be, an hour at the gym, got to join a sports club or team. It is however you want to define it. It just needs to take up space.
Yeah, that's an unbelievable goal. I think as a young trainer, I would get almost like frustrated, I think is a good word. Frustrated when a client would come to me and it's like they never think about going for a walk, they don't drink any water, and like they don't do the bare bones like basic stuff, and they don't think about exercise in any way in their day. And even for people listening to this, like even the fact that you're listening to this means you are already thinking about health in some capacity. It's not starting from zero. But there are people who, and it's not their fault, it's just the way that they were brought up in the world and the things that have happened in their life, that movement and exercise and health is just not part of the things that cross their mind. But if we can elevate that and going for a walk is not this monumental task anymore, then it's not a small thing. And I don't say this lightly, but like that is going to change the world. So I'm 100% behind you on that. And the more minds we can put this in and get these ideas out there, like the better that we're all going to be. It's just going to help everyone across the board in all things. And I'm not sure that I can be convinced otherwise. So, I'm happy that you're doing these things and I'm right with you.
I'm with you. Yeah. It's a beautiful journey trying to chase the mission of, getting that out to the world, but it definitely, wakes me up. It wakes a lot of people that I know up and I get to work with on a daily basis, chasing this same mission. So yeah, feeling very blessed and fulfilled to be able to, chase that with like-minded people, not only at Myodetox, but within the industry that are really passionate about the same goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And totally agreed once again. Kevin, what's your contact info and how can people get in contact with Myodetox and with Mindsets and all the stuff? I'll put all of it in the show notes, but if you want to rattle it off here for people to get at.
Yeah, absolutely. So my personal Instagram account is at Dr. Kev Hybrid, DRKEV_HYBRID. On my personal page, right, us talking about movement health earlier and just making sure we fit it in, right? Like my personal circle will just always get at me because I'm moving in everything, no matter what's going on. I'm always thinking about how can I get something in, and it's really just to inspire, right? Like the other day I shared a story where my son was playing in the backyard in the snow and he was not paying attention to me for a whole 10 minutes. I'm like, oh, I got to do something. Like I have a window here. I'm going to max out on it. It's like, it's not possible. They wouldn't let me do that, but just trying to inspire the world to just like whatever space you can take up through movement health, do so. So that's a lot of what I share on my page. Myodetox, the main page is at Myodetox, MYODETOX. And, on that platform, constantly sharing information around how Myodetox can be a guide in your life and in your journey to future proof and to movement health. And then our main website is www.myodetox.com. A lot about, the company, how folks could find us. We have right now we're at 4 clinics in Toronto. We'll be at 6 by the end of the year. Incredible, exciting growth here in Toronto. In Los Angeles, we have 3, and in Vancouver, we have 6. So that's where our clinics are. But on our main page, again, an opportunity to be able to just spread and share movement health with the entire world.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Kevin. Dr. Kev_hybrid on Instagram, Myodetox on Instagram, and myodetox.com. And Toronto, Vancouver, and LA. If you're in those cities, you have access to a Myodetox clinic close to you, or at least somewhat close to you. So check it out. And if not, then, look into the resources and see what you can take from it, because there's almost certainly something there for you through the social media, through the website and what have you, and just, continue to spread the message of movement health. And I think it's a good resource for people to learn and maybe spark some ideas and spark some conversations and grow your own community from within. So Kevin, thank you very much again for your time. I appreciate you sharing with us today. Share this podcast with a friend, to everybody who's listening, and make sure to check out Myodetox on all the places. Again, links in the show notes. Like, share, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, iTunes, all the places. All that stuff helps the show grow as much as possible. Give me a follow as well on Instagram if you haven't already, at Daniel Yoris. And that's it. Thanks everyone for being here. Go outside, be a good person, and we'll chat soon.